Can we talk about your process, for example, in pre-production? How do you start? How do you plan? How do you collaborate? What is your process there?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually I'll start working with a cinematographer really early when they're prepping the movie. So they'll call me and say, okay, here's some ideas of some looks. We got to figure out a look for the show, for the movie. Larry and I do this a lot actually. And he'll give me references or paintings or anything that he felt represents the palette that he wants, or references of other movies, that he wants to be able to bring into this new movie. And so what I'll do is I'll create lookup tables. I know what camera they're going to shoot. I'll create lookup tables where he can, or whoever I'm working with can use it in a test, right? And so when they're doing a hair makeup test or doing a camera test or something before they actually start shooting, they can use these lookup tables to be able to test on set and say, okay, yeah, this is reacting the way I want it to be, and this is exactly right. When we're shooting outside, I want it to feel more, high contrast or whatever. That kind of stuff, they can test it and see how it's reacting, and then I can go ahead and amend after that. So, it's just fine, it's too dark or it's too desaturated or whatever, and then we can create a new LUT, and then they test that again, and then that becomes the one show LUT that they use, almost like picking a film stock, right? Back in the day, you'd pick a look for your show based on the characteristics of the film stock, right? So we do the same thing, but we have more controls, which can go horribly wrong, if you go too far. So I've had a lot of experience making it so that we have LUTs that behave well, that aren't going to break anything and aren't going to, work well in the daylight and break everything at night, or, create any kind of noise or anything. So they have to be technically sound. So I do have a large color science team that helps, you know, make sure my LUTs are well behaved. They create. So we do all of that early on before they start shooting. And then when they start shooting, I can help supervise daily. So I did this on Joker for Larry, where for the first few weeks, just make sure that the Dailies colorist and the DIT, everybody's connected and everybody's talking. And I kind of oversee that and just make sure that I'm happy with how the dailies are looking, so that the cinematographer, like in this case, Larry, he could focus more on getting the show started. I can talk to him too. He can go and talk to the days. We're all on the same page. Everybody's on the same page, and making sure that what the studio and the director and everybody are seeing right in the beginning of the show is correct, right? So that's all in the very first 2 weeks. And then usually I let them fly away and let them go shoot their movie. And they come back to me, usually with some sort of visual effects reviews, or sometimes preview screenings or something after they start editing. And then what happens is when I get into start the DI, I already know what it should look like because I've created the LUT. I've been in these discussions. Throughout the process, if there's anything that is a problematic scene, I usually will be in contact with the cinematographer. So they'll say, this scene, whatever, it's coming. It's a day for night. So we're shooting at day. It really should be night. Just note to self, that kind of thing. And sometimes I'll color stuff before we get to the DI because of that. But, all of that is all history for me. So when I get into the DI, it's not just starting from scratch. I've got CDLs, which are basically the color decision lists that follow along with every shot, right? So the visual effects, this is also important for visual effects artists and visual effects vendors. They will have that one lookup table that I created. They will have the CDLs that go along with every shot. So they have a good idea of what the show should look like. So when they're creating visual effects, like when Larry and I did Godzilla, King of Monsters, that one, we already had all of the color really well set. So when they were creating all these CG characters, and we get into this digital intermediate, we're doing fine-tuning stuff. We're not doing very large moves so that the visual effects hold together well, the way they were designed. Because if you add too much contrast or something like that to a visual effect, it'll tend to fall apart. So, meaning like the show, it doesn't feel as real or whatever. So all of that whole process we set from the very beginning, it makes the end process go so much smoother. Visual effects, final DI, everybody also, which is really important, will be the director and the editors and the producers and everybody who sees everything, all the dailies, through this whole long process. gets very used to that look, right? So that's the look that they feel as the movie. So when we get into the final, everybody is not, nobody's going to be surprised with how it looks, So it's a very important thing to have your colorist involved from the very beginning, because it just makes everything it's really a communication tool to make sure everybody sees things the same way. Because, you can ask somebody, okay, what's your description for a bleach bypass? Or what's your description for high contrast or colorful or poppy, right? Like everybody will say something different, right? Like everybody will say nobody describes things the same way. So you could say to the producers, oh, don't worry. The dailies look kind of low contrast and flat now, but don't worry, they're going to have a lot of color and be poppy in the final, right? But they're used to the lower contrast. So when you start bringing in poppy colors or saturated, it's going to feel very foreign and it's not going to play the same way. And even sometimes when you're editing, or the editors have told me that, the color changes a lot, then it changes how they cut. If something's going to be much darker or much brighter, you're going to see things that you might want to cut around. So all of that, the whole process, it just makes it so much smoother if I can just start from the beginning.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer, and also very useful for students to hear, because people think of color as a post-production thing, but